Now, we were at this place. The Gita insists that Sankhya and Yoga are not two different, incompatible and discordant systems, but one in their principle and aim. They differ only in their method and starting point. The Sankhya also is a yoga, but it proceeds by knowledge. It starts, that is to say, by intellectual discrimination and analysis of the principles of our being, and attains its aim through the vision and position of the truth. Yoga, on the other hand, proceeds by works. It is in its first principle karma yoga, but it is evident from the whole teaching of the Gita and its later definitions that the word karma is used in a very wide sense, and that by yoga is meant all selfless devotion of all the inner as well as the outer activities as a sacrifice to the Lord of all works, offered to the Eternal as master of all the soul's energies and austerities. Yoga is the practice of the truth, of which knowledge gives the vision, and its practice has for its motor power a spirit of illumined devotion, of calm or fervent consecration to that which knowledge sees to be the highest. Well, again, it is a very brief description of the essential characteristics of these two yogas, of these two systems. You see, Aurobindo, as we have been saying, Sankhya is more a theoretical system of school, of system of knowledge. So he says that it starts by intellectual discrimination and analysis of the principles of our being. Now, what is this intellectual discrimination? Of which principles? They are the Purusha and the Prakriti. The witness, what we call the Sakshi Purusha, and the outer nature. We have seen this in the synthesis of yoga also. Aurobindo would take from the Sankhya only this practice. Not Aurobindo, like the Gita, rejects the question of the Purushas. He takes only the Vedantic Purusha. But this little practice of discrimination is taken both by Sri Aurobindo and the Gita. And this is what is important, intellectual discrimination. So in the beginning, I have to say to myself that I am not this Prakriti, I am not these emotions, I am not these desires, I am not this suffering, I am not this pain. So that means slowly you are distancing yourself from the outer nature. So if you constantly practice this, what happens, Sri Aurobindo also describes, then the question is, what are you then? You see, then the automatic question comes in, if I am rejecting all this, from the body to emotions to the minds, then there is a question that who are you? If you are not your thoughts, if you are not your emotions, if you are not your desires, if you are not your body, then this question slowly leads you inwards. This is the most important aspect of Sankhya, of Gita, and of integral yoga. So that is what is very beneficial. Rest of the things of Sankhya is pure theoretical and not much of use in the real practice of yoga. In a school of philosophy, fine, you come to know that. But if you want to apply to life, this is the one. So even as I told you, even Buddhists have taken up this question of discrimination. And even as the mother often tells us, start with self-analysis. What is the end result of this self-analysis? Same thing. If say, for example, let's take the mother's angle and you say, okay, what is the analysis of my thoughts? If I've been angry in the morning, I've been disturbed, I've been frustrated, I've depressed, whatever. or even we have been happy, you have been joyous. Then at a point of a time of withdrawal, I start sort of saying, okay, depression, anger, desire. Then I say, from where did this desire come from? It's not just sufficient to say, oh, it's come from the vital. Okay, vital is a big thing. I mean, everything can come in the vital. So don't just shut your book and say, oh, it's come from the vital and I'm over. She would say you have to penetrate into the source. From where did it come? Even you take, say you had the desire of a thing. Now if I say, oh, desire is fine, everybody has a desire, so I had my desire when I saw the car. A brand new model came and I was desirous for that. But then you say, from where did you get this desire? You go back. I saw that advertisement. But is that such a strong desire came into you just by seeing the advertisement on the TV? Then after a while it says, no, it's not that. Actually in Madras when I was going, that car passed by and suddenly, it became a living image. And that when the advertisement came in, I recollected, wow, that's the car, Then when you saw that, what attracted you in the car? Well, it was there, a beautiful shape, a beautiful color. Is that the only thing? No, then I saw that I could afford that car also. Because you see, a great car, the German make Benz goes and it is, I don't know now, I can't even imagine 50 lakhs or 30 lakhs. So if a Benz goes past me, I don't have a desire to own it because I know immediately at the back of my mind what is my bank balance. I know I don't have 30 lakhs to buy a Benz. So the desire doesn't even come into me. I can appreciate, oh, what a beautiful Benz. And if you want to appreciate what Benzes look like, you go to somebody's house in America and you will see 7 Benzes in one house. And you see all the ranges from the latest and I do not reveal the person's name. But you have all the Mercedes Benz there. Then you see, oh my, and then to sit in that is a great privilege. But you can't own it. What I'm trying to tell you is, you want to own, so you went into the section of saying, do I have the money or not? And then you went behind and you said, but why did you think of buying that car? No, it is a social prestige. There you are now coming to the point. In Pondicherry, do you really require a car? No, but I am the director of Saka, so I think I must have social prestige, so I want a car. You see how now you are coming closer. Instead of just saying, oh, I want a car, now when you go deeper into that, then your falsehood starts coming in, that you thought that it is a social prestige because you are a director. But if you are not a director, you don't want a car? No, then, chota mota, my scooter is fine enough. So now you see the falsehood comes into your nature. So now I would say desire and falsehood. You see the new element has come. Falsehood is this question of prestige, is an apparent thing, is falsehood which is much more dangerous. Then I said, no, I should not take a car because of the falsehood. Then you start saying, no, I think, you see, if I went there, then I can erase my desire. But in the beginning, I justified saying it's beautiful, it has a lovely shape, petrol is good, and it is available in Pondicherry, and blah, blah, blah. But when I went deeper and then I saw, oh my God, the whole thing starts from a falsehood, then it becomes a serious thing. So then I said, no, I think I should withdraw. So this is what we mean by a self-analysis, and there the question comes in, and there also Mother would say it's difficult to take out that falsehood. Because you want to take it out and then you say, no, tomorrow, we have become affiliated to MS University and a VC will come from Baroda, and then how do I take him around, so I can't take him in a rickshaw or an auto rickshaw. So he starts defending. A taxi is available, you call Rajaram and 250 rupees, he comes and picks up your VC and goes. But you see my justification, because he is a VC, I want to be on par with him, and he says, no, I must. So there will be a lot of mental justification for your falsehood. So the problem becomes so very sticky. And there the mother says, you have to put in the white light of the mother. And the moment you put in your white light, what happens? You know, you're kind of sleeping and somebody puts a torchlight on your eyes. And you get shocked and you get irritated, you don't like it. Hey, who the hell is putting this light? Shut it out. So that dormant falsehood also gets irritated. When the mother's light comes on that, it gets irritated, it gets bloated up, and then it starts, becoming more problem for you. Says, why did you disturb me? I was such a small falsehood. Now that you put the mother's light or whatever light you want to put in, I will not leave you. So the battle begins. One side, I want to put the mother's light because I've realized in the light of the mother, falsehood should not be there. Falsehood says, no, I've been there for last 6 months and suddenly want me to go out. No question. So that is called the inner battle. Then the mother would say, that is the hard thing. You have to use like pincers, hold that and pull it off. And that pulling it off, is the real pain. Because it's sticking to your nature, to your desire, to your want, to your mind, so with such great intensity, it says that is painful. But if you want to do sadhana, that pain you have to undergo. That is what is called pulling out the desire. So all these things will really take you to a very deep self-analysis. And what we see in Sankhya is a little on the surface level. It doesn't go as deep as the mother says. But here it is principle is subjective practice and inner change. So here I'm just saying, this is my desires I don't like. This is my inner ambition, my mental ambition, I don't want to have that. So it's a little first splitting, I must say. Whereas what the mother said is transformation. Whereas what Sankhya is telling is only separation. So in the mother we go a deeper, pulling out that falsehood. And when you cannot pull it out, you say, Ma, get that light. And only with the help of the mother's light that we can pull out these things. But then the question is, how many black spots are there which you can pull out? Sometimes ladies go to parlors and to pull out the little black spots here and there. Beauty parlor fellow can take out 1, 2, 3, 4, some black spots are here and there. But which parlor will you go to take out all the black spots in your being? That there's no parlor like that. But there is some place you can go. But if you go daily and sit there for an hour near the samadhi, maybe every day 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3 points can be pulled out. But you got to go to the divine parlor there. So purification can take place with the divine touch. It's not impossible, but like you told to go to ladies, I don't know, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I don't know how often you go to take out the black spots in your face. But here we have to do it every day. And if possible, every hour. That means, realize that I have this black spot and say, Ma, please pull it out, pull it off. But in one place, mother says, we don't want to have it pulled out. Because a beauty spot on your cheek, is a beauty spot, let it be there. And everybody knows Ananda has a beauty spot on his cheek. I love my beauty spot. I love my black spot. I love my weaknesses because ultimately my weaknesses are me and mine. So you see, what a beautiful analysis. She would say, more than our good points, we own our weak points. So she said, when somebody said, well, you should come and offer it, Mothers, do we give our weak points also? She says, exactly, but that is the most difficult because you own your weak points. Whereas a good point, you say, okay, I'm a good speaker, fine. But if I have a bad habit, say it's mine, I will not give it away. So Mother on the contrary says, normally people don't give up their this weak points to the divine because they are more in love with their weak point than with their good points. So with all my aspiration and rejection and divinity and philosophy, when I go to the Mother and say, Ma, give me moksha and liberation. But one bad spot in your body, she says, you do not want to give because you love them more. That is the sadhana, where she says, you have to give me everything, you give me more your dark region than the light regions. But she says, human beings love their dark region much more than they love their light regions. So that is the difficulty that comes in sadhana. But you can see already that is so much of transformation. Whereas Sankhya Yoga is a beginning of the splitting. So I'm bringing in all these points to show you the difference that Aurobindo and the Gita and the Sankhya have. In this book we are getting the difference between Sankhya and Gita. But I'm trying to pull you a bit into the Gita, into yoga, integral yoga, to make it relevant. Otherwise, you may not be able to understand as easily. So that is the difference here. But he says, this is the first principle. This is the necessary thing. And that is the. Then we see where is that? Intellectual discrimination and analysis of the principles of our being, and attains its aim through the vision and possession of the truth. Next, yoga, on the other hand, proceeds by works. It is in its first principle karma yoga. Well, you may find it a little difficult to understand this, but I'll give you one little hint here. Now, for example, this yoga I was telling you about, the Ashtanga yoga, I will take it up tomorrow, but just to give you one example, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. These are the 8. Now Aurobindo is telling yoga in the beginning is the principle of karma yoga. Now what does it mean? Now we have, in the beginning is, first thing is yama, next is niyama, third is asana. Yama means abstention and includes the 5 vows of Jainism. It is abstention from injury through thought, word or deed, etc., etc. Niyama, it is self-culture and includes external and internal purification. Third, asanas, it means steady and comfortable posture. And fourth, pranayama, it means control of breath. So these are all karma. Even when it says abstention and includes 5 vows of Jainism. So this is a question of abstention from ahimsa and from falsehood, from stealing, from passions and lust. So these are do's and don'ts. Niyama and yama are nothing but do's and don'ts, which are actually there in every yoga. Although we claim that integral yoga has no rules and regulations, it's all free, but come to the brass tacks. In fact, I would like somebody, a scholar, a PhD or MPhil, doesn't matter, it's not necessarily a scholarship, but somebody should work on the yamas and niyamas of integral yoga itself. You may think, why are we doing that when Aurobindo and the Mother have said we should not have any rules? But I think down the line there are some do's and don'ts. Not only for the ashramites as such, where the basic rule that they say is no politics, no sex and no drugs. That is so called for the ashramite, that means those who are on the prosperity list. But for doing sadhana, there are so many yamas and niyamas. So there are these things. So these are the karma yoga, to do and not to do. And asanas also is something that you have to do every day. So that is why we say that it's there in the beginning as a principle of karma yoga. But it is evident from the whole teaching of the Gita and its later definition that the word karma is used in a very wide sense, and that by yoga is meant the selfless devotion of all the inner as well as the outer activities as a sacrifice. You see, the word that we have karma in yoga is purely action, works, or all this question of abstention from ahimsa, from satya, from asatya, asteya, from brahmacharya, from aparigriha, whatever they are. I'll explain tomorrow. But again, the word karma in the Gita becomes much more expanded. It is not just the works that you are doing, it's just the duty that you are doing, and then you cannot be called a karma yogi because you are going to the office every day at 9 and coming back home at 5. He is not a karma yogin who does a good duty. But karma yogin is one who does the work as a sacrifice to the Lord of all works. So this question of sacrifice, and in the mother and Sri Aurobindo it becomes a question of surrender. There's a little difference between sacrifice and surrender. We'll see later. So here he would say, works done as a yajna, that is karma yoga in the Gita. Whereas in yoga, in the yoga system, don't confuse the word yoga with our yoga. But when I say yoga, it's a system I'm referring to. In yoga, these are the works. What are we said? Be away from ahimsa and satya and asteya, etc. These are the works. But whereas in Gita, all works and any kind of work done as yajna becomes karma yoga, not otherwise. Whereas in Mother and Sri Aurobindo now we come in, that we say not as sacrifice, but as an offering. There's a constant, continuous offering of all works. Now works again, both in the Gita and Sri Aurobindo, enlarges its scope to the level of the thought, feelings and actions. Work is not just physical work, but any thought or any emotion is also a work. So we have to therefore and thereby surrender your thoughts, your emotions, your actions. So that's where we see now the question of the definition of karma. And as we said, I think we have a further clarification in integral yoga regarding karma, which is not there in the Gita as much. Of course, one can always argue saying, no, Gita says this, it means therefore what Sri Aurobindo is saying. But what I'm trying to say is what is said clearly and what is not said. There could be a lot of implications, but Sri Aurobindo is not bringing out this implication, but really the meaning. For example, the word karma again. Karma in the yoga, we said, is a set of works. In the Gita, all works given as a sacrifice. In Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we said, it is all works given as offering. Plus, there's something more. He said, if you have to have karma as offering you can give, but then for karma yoga you have to do works without ego. That is the new addition we see. It's only the more you do your actions without ego that you are becoming a karma yogin. What's the distinction? Let us see here. You see, the more you offer, how to become this egoless worker, the process is the offering. You see, these are very practical methods. I don't see there's any theory in this. How to become a karma yogin? Offer your works. By offering your work, what happens? Your ego becomes less. By the ego becoming diminished and less, what happens? Your consciousness of the divine increases. Your link with the divine becomes much more intense. And by ego becoming lesser and lesser, what's happening? You get to the psychic being. I mean, it's a clear 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 4 is 9. It's as clear a mathematics as that. But if you put it into practice. So all our life, what we are doing, trying to do is this offering. And so don't again say, hey sir, I've been 30 years, I've been offering and I'm still not getting into my psychic. Well, that itself means what kind of offering have you done? You have not offered yourself fully. So this is a guaranteed procedure. That the more you offer, the less you become egoistic, the less the ego, more the psychic being, and then you will be controlled by your psychic being. So this is the last dimension that I wanted to add. And then ultimately, when you go closer to the psychic being, the ultimate realization you have is, Ma, it is you who are doing the works. Even in the Gita that would come. The Gita Yogin ultimately says, well, I have been a doer, I have been an instrument, but now I see all that was false. Actually, you were the doer, you were the instrument. I have been only an occasion. So the last stage you realize, all this yoga is useless, is only an eyewash. Because right from the beginning it is she who does it. But we have to come to the stage of realizing, let's not say, hey, right now that mother is doing, so I eat my things, I do my fun. No. That is where a lot of our integral sadhaks take advantage. Shaukicho ma kochen, mother is doing everything, mai karegi. No, I think we have to do our share. So this is at the ultimate stage when you look back and you say, oh my God, it's she who has been doing, it's she who brought me to this place, it's she who made me meet these people, it's she who... That is the ultimate stage. So these are the sequences that I am trying to trace out. So we have seen here now the question of the Gita, of yoga, the Gita, integral yoga, and the ultimate realization. So coming back to the text, so this is where we said yoga is the first principle is karma yoga, but it is evident that karma is a kind of a sacrifice to the Lord of all works. And now lastly, yoga is the practice of the truth of which knowledge gives the vision, and its practice has for its motor power a spirit of illumined devotion, of calm or fervent consecration to that which knowledge sees to be the highest. Well, this is, of course, he says now there's a question of work with the motor power of devotion, what we just now described, that without this energy and force of devotion, your knowledge cannot be complete. Now, what is interesting here, one thing that we have to bring into picture is, why did Gita introduce the question of Purusha and Purushottama? Or not Purusha or Purushottama? You see, I'm interested more in seeing philosophically why the Lord Krishna does his business. But for our philosophical understanding, what was wrong with Sankhya and Yoga? I could have had a lovely body by asanas and pranayam full of energy, and by this meditation of yoga I could have had a really quiet mind, get into samadhi, get away from problems. But why did the Gita bring in the question of Purushottama? Because we know in Sankhya there is no Purushottama, there is no God. In yoga we said he introduced the question of God, but in the Gita he brings in the question of Purushottama. That philosophically is obviously because Yoga itself means union with the divine. When we are asked to do this question of offering, to whom do you offer? You don't offer it to the sun or to the moon or to the tree or to the wind. There is a conscious power behind. That's why they call it Surya Dev. The sun was given the form of a godhead. And to that Surya Dev you offer. What we say, Surya Namaskar, you are giving to this God of the sun. So we cannot offer to an impersonal thing. You need a personal Godhead. Therefore, Sri Krishna had to bring in the Purushottama aspect to whom you could offer. Otherwise, there cannot be any Karma Yoga, nor can there be any Bhakti Yoga. All these things require somebody who receives your bhakti, somebody who receives your offering. So there was a philosophical necessity of introducing the concept of Purushottama, because yoga means offering to that person. Now coming to the next para. But what are the truths of Sankhya? The philosophy drew its name from its analytical process. Sankhya is the analysis, the enumeration, the separative and discriminative setting forth of the principles of our being, of which the ordinary mind sees only the combinations and results of combination. Well, this is what we said. One is the right knowledge, the other is the numbers. So Sri Aurobindo is taking the second one, that it is enumeration, the separative and discriminating setting forth of the principles of our being, of which the ordinary mind sees only the combinations. What are these principles of our being? We will see, as I was telling you, there are 24 principles. There is the buddhi, there is the ahankara, there is, this seeing and hearing, and I'll tell you the full list. Maybe I'll bring you a chart tomorrow. I'm planning to do that. It did not seek at all to synthesize. Its original standpoint is in fact dualistic, not with the very relative dualism of the Vedantic schools, which call themselves by that name Dvaita, but in a very absolute and transcendent fashion. You see, this one little explanation perhaps. You see, when we have this question of Vedantic duality, what Sri Aurobindo calls here Dvaita, the word we have from the Advaita and Dvaita. Advaita is, you can see the competition here. Advaita means it is non-dual. That means one or single. Dvaita is duality. But what kind of a duality is it? We have here God and nature, or we have Purusha and Prakriti, or we have the Brahman and Atman. But all these dualities here, according to the Vedas and the Vedanta, these are not eternal dualities. The word is eternal. Because ultimately the Vedanta and the Vedas would say, ultimately all these are only one supreme Godhead or one supreme reality. It is this one supreme reality which divides itself into this duality 1 and duality 2. So this is the Vedantic duality. They have given us this separation for the sake of manifestation. for the sake of manifestation only. To explain manifestation, they have said that the one has become the many. And this many is, sometimes we say, duality. That means the duality has further become the many. So what we want to tell here is, what Aurobindo is telling, that that this original standpoint is in fact dualistic, not with the relative dualism. So Aurobindo calls this as the relative dualism. Relative dualism. Whereas here, in the Sankhya, it is an absolute or an eternal dualism. That means in Sankhya, Purusha and Prakriti are two different realities which can never meet in any point, either in the Brahman or the Supreme or anywhere. So that is the distinction we see here. In fact, dualistic, not with very relative dualism of the Vedantic schools, which call themselves by that name Dvaita, but in a very absolute and trenchant fashion. The trenchant and absolute is that of the Sankhya. For them, Purusha is eternally separate from Prakriti. So these are dual realities eternally. And here it says, for it explains existence not by one, but by two principles, by two original principles, whose interrelation is the cause of the universe. So we see here the question of the question of Purusha and Prakriti. And it's a combination of these two that we have the universe. Now when I say the word combination, let's be a little more careful. It is not really that kind of a combination 50-50. It is hardly 1% here and 99% is here. So there's not a real combination, but still even that 1% is required for Prakriti to bring out this universe. And that 1% is nothing but to say yes. What we call the consent. In fact, with the single word yes from the Purusha, Prakriti started creating the rest of the work. You know, it's very interesting. There is a truth about this. If you remember, the mother herself narrates the story of creation, and then she says the Supreme Lord wanted to create. As you have seen, this thought is there in the Vedas, is there in the Upanishads, everywhere. The Supreme Lord said, I am one, I am lonely, I would like to have the second. I would like to have the many. So this was the first, if you can put it loosely, the first original desire to be many. And then the mother says the Supreme wanted to become many and he called forth his consciousness, and that was me. So what does it mean? And then when I was brought forth, the Lord commanded me to create. Same thing like Sankhya. Sankhya gave its consent to Prakriti to create. We call that the consent, we call this here in Aurobindo the command. But basically it comes to the same thing. It's the Purusha which commands the Prakriti to create, and Prakriti started the creation, and we get the process here. What are the different steps of this creation? And of course in Mother's story, the first creation was a bungling, I don't know how she could do that with all her knowledge. But she bungled the first creation. And that is why all this falsehood and darkness and suffering, all that we have, that was the first creation. So all that was, Sat and Chit and Ananda became their very opposites. So when there became a complete bungling, then the mother didn't know what to do. So she cried back to the Lord and said, Lord, this is what has happened, quite unholy, quite unexpected. Then the Lord said, you recreate. But this time, keep the strings in your hand. Don't give freedom to these powers. Because first time she had given freedom to all the four aspects of the four powers. But this time he said, make an ordered creation. So don't let loose things right from one to the other end. So the ordered creation was the different worlds, supermind, overmind, intuitive mind, this thing. So it was a kind of a laddered world. So you could come down that ladder and you could come up the ladder. So that was a safeguard. But in Prakriti, also, in Sankhya also it's the same thing. What I'm interested is to see the similarity that they also have spoken of an ordered world. How right from the Prakriti, the first thing, Mahat, the great Buddhi, then Ahankara, then this. It's a wonderful order. So you see, there was a great truth. That's what I'm trying to imply, that what he said has a truth. And the process is similar to what Aurobindo and the mother are describing. For they did not have that vision of the supermind and all that. But basically the structured universe is there in the Sankhya too. So coming back to this question, there is their interrelation which is the cause of the universe. Purusha the inactive, Prakriti the active. Purusha is the soul, not in the ordinary or popular sense of the word, but a pure conscious being, immobile, immutable and self-luminous. Prakriti is energy and its process. See, I can imagine why Sankhya had to be this dualistic philosophy. Because you see, Vedanta had told us that the Brahman is immutable, unchangeable, static. So if you accept the Upanishads and the Vedas that it is Brahman is immutable, does not change, then how do you recount for this change that we call the world? So these are all philosophical questions, but you see, sometime maybe our great founder, Ishwar Krishna, had to solve this problem that one side we say he is unchangeable, but what is this nature? Advaita clearly said, very cleverly said, there is nothing called Prakriti and all this is an illusion. That is one way, you trenchantly cut off the problem, saying, who said there is this world? It's an illusion. Finish. At one go, the whole problem is solved. But our Ishwar Krishna did not do that. He said, no, the world is real. But how do I put these two together? One, the unchangeable, and the other, the changeable. So he made two realities separate. He says, soul, you are the unchangeable reality, what he calls here. Purusha is a soul and which is immobile, immutable, self-luminous. So he has not disturbed the Vedantic description of the soul saying you are unchangeable. He said, fine, you are unchangeable, I will not touch you. But then Prakriti is what he said is active, is energy, and Prakriti is energy and its process. So very cleverly Ishwar Krishna gave these two entities a different reality. So it is inactive and Prakriti is active. So it was independent, they could do what they want. But you will see ultimately, he also gets into problems, philosophical problems. And we'll discuss that tomorrow perhaps. So here he says, Purusha is that, Prakriti is this. Purusha does nothing, but it reflects the action of energy and its processes. Prakriti is mechanical, but by being reflected in Purusha, it assumes the appearance of consciousness in its activities, and thus there are created, first let me stop that. So first thing is, this Purusha does nothing but it reflects the action of energy and its processes. Now what is Purusha doing? He is there as a mirror. And Prakriti is reflecting, all the works of Prakriti are reflected in this mirror. And the mirror says, I am not doing anything. I am just static. I am not taking any part. But because my surface is so brilliant, Prakriti is reflecting. I am not doing. So see, I am not arguing all this on the spiritual level. That's a different thing. I am purely considering philosophical level. So philosophically, Purusha is maintaining his status of immobility, unchanging. But he is reflecting. Whereas Prakriti is mechanical. But if you say it's mechanical, how does this conscious being called man come into picture? How are we talking about philosophy, arts and this and that? That means we have a consciousness. But the question is, how can Prakriti have consciousness? Because only soul has the consciousness. Prakriti is jada, is non-conscious. But we see again the opposite, that all this flower, look at the beautiful flower, the animals, the trees, the human beings. Obviously they all have a consciousness. So you see, great thinkers have to face questions in their own times. If you see the history of Indian philosophy, is one of the most magnificent intellectual exercise. And people did not just write, and you see these have lasted us centuries and nobody has bettered them. There are a lot of commentaries which come about with the commentaries and questions and all that. But so they have found out the defects, but when they were written in their own time, they have taken into consideration all these questions. So the question must have been raised to the gentleman saying, then how do you really explain the human being and the bird and the animal with the consciousness? So Ishvara Krishna says, by the fact of reflection, it has gotten some consciousness. So you would say, is by being reflected in Purusha, it assumes the appearance of consciousness in its activities. Like the moon. Moon says, I have light. But does it really have its own light? No. It's the reflected light of the sun. So the moonlight is nothing but a reflection of sunlight. So it is as if Prakriti is saying, look, I've got light. But the answer is, sorry, you don't have light. You are reflecting the light of the Purusha. So that reflection seems to be the light, and people say, oh, it is a beautiful moonlight, romantic, and millions of poems are written on that. But actually it is a false thing. Similarly, in this philosophy too, that there is a reflection only, and thus there are created those phenomena of creation, conservation, dissolution, birth and life and death, consciousness and unconsciousness, sense knowledge and intellectual knowledge, and ignorance, action and inaction, happiness and suffering, which the Purusha under the influence of Prakriti attributes to itself, although they belong not at all to itself, but to the action or movement of Prakriti alone. The more I read these people, the more I admire the level of the great wisdom and realization these ancient masters had. And I'm saying this because now we know Sri Aurobindo, so we can look back and see, wow, it was a great knowledge that has really sustained the Indian community and society for so many centuries. Because what is this? This question of all this birth and life and death and this question of consciousness, unconsciousness, sense knowledge, intellectual knowledge, action, ignorance, happiness, suffering. We are actually involved. I say I am suffering, I am happy, I am in ignorance, I have knowledge. But who is that I? Is it the outer nature? Is it my body which is saying I have knowledge? Is it the mind which says I am in ignorance? Who is that I? The I is the soul. The soul is saying that I am in this ignorance, I am in this kind of a creativity, I am in this kind of a life and death experience. But actually, can the soul itself be a participant in this suffering, in this happiness? No. The Gita says that, Aurobindo says that the soul has nothing to do with all your sorrows and sufferings and happinesses and relations and relationships and your funs and festivals and celebrations. It has nothing to do with all these things. Then why is it that I am saying that I am suffering, I am this, I am that? So the answer is, the Purusha under the influence of Prakriti attributes to itself, although they belong not at all to itself, but to the action or movement of Prakriti alone. Actually, who is suffering is my mind, is my body, is my emotion, is my heart, whatever you want to say. Who is in ignorance is the mind. Soul is not ignorant. It is full of knowledge. Soul is not suffering. It's supposed to be bliss. Soul is not confused. It is the clarity of the divine. So actually all these are happening in the outer Prakriti. But what happens, we in the beginning, if you remember, not here, in the synthesis of yoga, Aurobindo explains how in the beginning the soul thinks that I am the body. The soul itself identifies itself with the body, saying that I am the body. And we have seen 4 chapters are written on this. Identification with the body, identification with the emotions, identification with the mind. So through evolution, you see, as I was explained in that other class, that you see all youngsters and the teenagers, their entire focus is on the body. Because for them, Mr. Y, Mr. Miss X is the body. So they go for fashion, they go for dresses, they go for this, they go for that, all to think of beautifying the body. Because they think they are the body. But that young woman and that young man, when they come out of their teens, they get into job, they get into the world, they get married, focus changes. Then the soul says, no, I'm not the body. Okay, body is fine. Let me be smart because I'm the director, I'm the CEO, I'm the managing. Okay, body gets less important, but now the emotion, the vital, the power, the position. You say, hey, I'm so and so, I've got to behave like that. The second stage, the soul says, I am the vital. There's a growth. Third stage, soul says, I am the mind. And lastly, the soul says, oh, I'm sorry, I was not all these things. I am the divine. That is the point of realization. That needs sadhana. Up until the level of mind is the natural, spontaneous growth of every human being. Some people may get stuck in the vital, say, no, I am the minister, I am the powerful minister, I am the central minister. So power and vitality and emotions, they get stuck there. But a normal being, they go to the mind and say, no, all those emotions are gone. But the sadhana is required to make the soul realize that I am the divine. That's where spirituality comes in and sadhana comes in. So Aurobindo would say, what the Gita tells us here, is this question that the Purusha under the influence of Prakriti attributes itself. This is what I am explaining to you. It attributes itself, it is the reality. It's truth. It's not just a false attribution, self-attribution. It takes ages, decades for it to grow and grow. And that's what we say, oh, now the man is mature. He's no more thinking, the body is the end, that the emotions are the only thing. When you see somebody moving towards the psychic being or the soul, then you say, yeah, he's a great man. Great in the sense, he's not the ordinary rung of the people, stuck in the vital, stuck in the mental. There's a little pushing toward the limits of higher ranges. But that requires a long time of maturation, sadhana, perseverance, aspiration, etc. So, that is the truth of the matter. That actually is the nature which is doing, but the soul thinks that it is the thing, but it comes of it. Well, I'll just see how long we can go in this next para. I'll just go even the middle. But actually this is, I can do a little bit because from here begins the real philosophy of Sankhya. I'll give it a reading in the little time that we have. Then tomorrow I'll give you the real philosophy because exactly Aurobindo is giving the philosophy of Sankhya. I'll give you a chart tomorrow. Now let us see. For Prakriti is constituted of 3 gunas, or essential modes of energy. Sattva, the seed of intelligence, conserves the workings of energy. Rajas, the seed of force and action, creates the workings of energy. Tamas, the seed of inertia and non-intelligence, the denial of sattva and rajas, dissolves what they create and conserve. Well, I'll not get into this description, which you know by now, that our Prakriti consists of sattva, rajas and tamas. And what they are, we see the description here. When these 3 parts of the energy of Prakriti are in a state of equilibrium, all is in rest. There is no movement, action or creation, and there is therefore nothing to be reflected in the immutable luminous being of the conscious soul. But when the equilibrium is disturbed, then the 3 gunas fall into a state of inequality in which they strive with and act upon each other, and the whole inextricable business of ceaseless creation, conservation and dissolution begins, unrolling the phenomena of the cosmos. Now this is of course the essential, the beginning of creation. You see, we have what we said, Purusha, and then Prakriti. And Prakriti is consisting of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. But in the beginning, this is in an equilibrium, is a kind of an ocean of a perfect balancing between Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. That is what Aurobindo is describing here with this word, that in a state of equilibrium, all is in rest, there is no movement or action. So this is perfect rest or equilibrium. But then he says, when the equilibrium is disturbed, then the 3 gunas fall into a state of inequality. The question of disturbance comes in. This is the main question. How? We have Purusha, we have Prakriti, and it's a perfectly rest and equilibrium state. How did this question of disturbance come in? We understand the meaning of disturbance. I mean, we are all quiet and meditating, and then suddenly something happens and I get disturbed. So what disturbed Prakriti? The cause is Purusha. A glance of Purusha at Prakriti disturbs the equality. It is this glance which is the one person I said. It is this glance, the looking at, which has disturbed this and then their creation. There are waves upon this ocean of sattva, rajas and tamas. Disturbance means in what sense? There's a response. I mean, you take it into the case of a lover, young man and woman. A little look from the Purusha can arouse a lot of emotion in the woman, or vice versa. I'm not saying this way. But this kind of a glance of look of love, which creates an emotion, a response, and that emotional response we can call it as the disturbance. And once there is this emotion, what happens? Then there is a disturbance in this equilibrium. Emotion belongs to Rajas. So immediately Rajas increases, Sattva and Tamas decrease, and so you have now got 60 and 15 plus 15 or 15 plus 20, whatever, 65. That means the percentage of the Rajas increases and the Sattva and Tamas decreases. And immediately there are these waves and the disturbance begins. And it is this disturbance which kind of ends up in this creation. Because once the Prakriti is disturbed, and the emotions, the commotion, all that begins, and it starts creating. You may understand it better if I again translate it into Mother and Sri Aurobindo. You see, it's really thanks that we know Mother and Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, and that's what I always hold. If you read Sri Aurobindo, you understand your own philosophy is much better. Because this question of disturbance is really true in the sense, if you have read the Mother's own experiences where she says, this whole creation begins with vibrations. There are waves and waves of vibrations which have actually solidified into this creation. And what is that wave? If you remember her experience, which comes out in the agenda and her notes on the way, she says, I've been to that origin of creation, and what does she see? There are huge waves of love, divine love, which are coming out of the divine and, like a tsunami, wave after wave going. And as they go, they become more and more solidified and concretized. And that ultimate concretization is called matter. So what these people have said has an element of truth. So disturbance is not in the negative sense, but there is the waves, vibration that get created, and which slowly they get formalized and formulated into subtle physical and the gross physical. So now you see, these ancients did catch the truth of the supermind, of the overmind. They put it according to those times on the mental, intellectual level we will see. But the origin of this philosophy has a truth. Yeah? So I think we'll stop at that because I know you have to move on. But tomorrow I'll take you a little deeper into the philosophy so that what we are discussing about Sri Aurobindo and the Gita becomes clearer. We'll have a moment's silence before we leave.